Good evening. Tonight's story is called The Tale of the Monkey and the Turtle from Philippine mythology. So snuggle up under the blankets and prepare for a wonderful night of sleep. And once you're all settled in, close your eyes. I was only 10 years old when my grandfather first told me about the banana tree that changed everything. Sitting cross-legged on the bamboo floor of his nipa hut in Pampanga, as the afternoon rain tapped gently on the roof, like fingers keeping time to an ancient rhythm, I watched his weathered hands trace the shapes of two creatures, one clever but impatient, the other slow but wise, whose rivalry would teach me the most important lesson of my life. If you've ever wondered how wisdom can triumph over strength, how patience outlasts greed, subscribe to our channel for more tales where the echoes of ancient Philippines still whisper truths we need today. My memories of that summer are bathed in golden light, the same light that filtered through the gaps between the bamboo slats of Lolo's hut, creating shifting patterns on the floor where I sat each afternoon. Outside, the village of San Fernando buzzed with life, chickens pecking at the dusty earth, women washing clothes in basins, men returning from the fields, but inside, time moved differently when my grandfather spoke. Lolo Francisco was not a tall man, but his presence filled any room. His skin was dark and lined like the bark of an ancient tree, weathered by 93 years under the Philippine sun. Most elders in our barrio commanded respect, but Lolo carried something more. He held our stories. You know, Hapo, he said one afternoon as thunder rumbled in the distance. Before there were books, before the Spaniards came, even before the first boat crossed from China, we had our stories. He leaned forward, his eyes catching the light. And in these stories live all the wisdom our ancestors learned. I nodded, though at 10 years old I didn't fully understand. All I knew was that when Lolo's voice dropped to that particular tone, soft yet clear, like water over smooth stones, I was about to be transported. Today, he said, settling back against his wooden chair, I will tell you about Pagong and Matsing, the turtle and the monkey. Not just the story you might have heard in school, but the true tale as my grandmother told me. The rain began then, a gentle curtain that wrapped around the hut like a cocoon. I hugged my knees to my chest, watching as Lolo closed his eyes, searching for the beginning of a story older than any building in our province. Long ago, he began, his voice blending with the rhythm of the rain, when animals spoke to each other just as you and I speak now. There lived two neighbors, a monkey and a turtle. I could almost see them, the sleek brown monkey with clever eyes, the patient turtle with its patterned shell. As Lolo spoke, they became real, moving through a landscape that was at once ancient and familiar, the same rivers and trees that surrounded our village, but in a time when the world was younger. These two were not exactly friends, Lolo continued, but they were not enemies either. The monkey lived in the tall trees near the bend in the river, quick to laugh but quicker to anger. The turtle made his home by the riverbank, slow in movement but steady in purpose. It happened during the season of rains, Lolo said, tracing an invisible pattern on his knee. The river had swelled, bringing down treasures from the mountains, branches, leaves, sometimes even whole trees. Lolo's voice transported me to that ancient riverbank, where I could almost feel the humid air against my skin and hear water rushing over stones. One morning, as Pagong rested on a smooth rock, warming himself after a cool night, he spotted something unusual floating downstream. It was green and thick, bobbing gently in the current. What was it, Lolo? I asked, though I already knew. The anticipation was part of the ritual. A young banana stalk, he answered, nodding slowly, healthy and strong, torn from some garden upstream by the rushing water. In my mind, I saw the turtle watching the treasure approach, his ancient eyes calculating. Banana trees were precious, providing fruit, leaves for wrapping rice cakes, fibers for rope. Even a young stalk was valuable. Pagong slipped into the water and swam toward the plant. But as he reached for it, he heard a familiar chatter from above. Lolo mimicked the sound, a high-pitched, excited call that made me smile despite myself. Matsing had spotted the same prize from his perch in a nearby tree, and in an instant he swung down from branch to branch, landing with a splash near the floating treasure. I could picture the scene, the monkey's sudden appearance, water droplets catching sunlight as they scattered into the air. "That banana plant is mine," declared Matsing, reaching for it with long fingers. "I saw it first." "But I reached it first," said Pagong calmly, already holding one end in his mouth. Lolo paused, taking a sip of water from the bamboo cup beside him. Outside, the rain continued to fall, creating a gentle percussion on the Nipa roof. They argued back and forth as the current threatened to carry the stork away from both of them. Finally, Pagong suggested, "Perhaps we can share this good fortune. Let us divide the banana plant between us." I shifted on my mat, imagining the scene, the impatient monkey, the steady turtle, the precious plant bobbing between them in the river current. "I will take the top with the leaves," said Matsing quickly, thinking himself very clever. "You can have the bottom part with the roots," Lolo's eyes twinkled. "And what do you think of that division, Apo?" I considered the question seriously. The monkey thought he was being smart because the leaves look nice. And what about the roots? "The roots are what grow," I answered, remembering what my father had taught me about planting in our small garden. Lolo smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Yes, Matsing saw only what was visible at that moment, the beautiful green leaves. Pagong understood what was not yet visible, the future. "So they split the banana stalk," Lolo continued. "Matsing took the leafy top and climbed back to his home in the trees. Pagong carefully carried the root section to a small patch of rich soil near the riverbank. As Lolo continued the story, the afternoon deepened around us. The rain had settled into a steady patter, and the light shifted, turning everything in the hut to golden shadow. "What happened next was a lesson in patience," Lolo said. Matsing took his prize, the top of the banana plant with all its fine green leaves, and planted it in the fork of his favorite tree. He was so proud, showing all the other animals his new acquisition, boasting about how clever he had been to claim the best part. My grandfather's hands moved as he spoke, becoming the monkey arranging leaves, adjusting the position of his treasure. Meanwhile, Pagong dug a small hole in the soft earth by the riverbank. He carefully placed the root section in the ground, covered it with rich soil and watered it thoroughly. Every day he tended to his plant, clearing away weeds, keeping the soil moist, protecting it from hungry insects. Lolo paused, looking at me intently. "Do you know how a banana plant grows, Apo?" I shook my head. "It begins underground. The roots spread and strengthen before anything appears above the soil. For many days it might seem that nothing is happening. This is why many people fail at growing things. They lose heart when they don't see immediate results." Outside, a gust of wind rattled the bamboo wind chimes my grandmother had hung years ago. The sound mingled with Lolo's voice, creating a melody that seemed part of the story itself. Days passed, then weeks. Matsing's beautiful green leaves began to wither. Without roots to draw water and nutrients, they turned brown and brittle. He watered them and tried to revive them, but it was useless. Eventually, frustrated and angry, he tore them to pieces and threw them away. I could imagine the monkey's disappointment turning to rage, the dried leaves scattered by the wind. All this time, Pagong continued his patient care, and one morning he was rewarded. A small green shoot pushed up through the soil where he had planted the roots. Each day it grew taller, eventually unfurling fresh green leaves that reached toward the sun. Lolo's face softened as he described the growing plant, and I realized he was no longer just telling a folk tale. He was sharing something he himself had experienced, the miracle of growth and patience. As the weeks passed, Pagong's banana plant flourished. It grew tall and strong, and eventually a purple flower bud appeared. This bud opened to reveal small banana fruits that grew larger and more numerous as the days passed. The rain outside had stopped, but neither of us moved to open the shutters. We remained in our cocoon of storylight, the world outside temporarily forgotten. One day, as the bananas were beginning to ripen, Matsing happened to pass by Pagong's home. He stopped, shocked at the sight of the thriving banana plant heavy with fruit. Lolo's voice took on a higher pitch as he mimicked the monkey's words. "Where did you get that banana tree?" demanded Matsing. Then lower and calmer for the turtle. "It grew from the roots of the banana stalk we found in the river," Pagong replied simply. Lolo shifted in his chair, and I knew we were reaching an important part of the story. The rain had stopped, and through the bamboo slats I could see patches of blue sky appearing between the clouds. Matsing stared at the bananas, his mouth watering. Lolo continued. They were beginning to turn from green to yellow, almost ready to eat. He had not forgotten how he had taken what he thought was the better part of the plant, only to watch it wither and die. What did he do? I asked, though I had a feeling I knew. He pretended to be happy for his neighbor. "What good fortune you have, Pagong," he said, his voice sweet as honey. "Your patience has been rewarded." Lolo's impression of the monkey was so convincing, the falseness in the tone, the hidden intentions, that I felt a shiver despite the warm afternoon. Pagong, who was not fooled but was always polite, thanked him. But there was a problem. The bananas were ripening at the top of the plant, and Pagong could not climb to reach them. I nodded, understanding the turtle's dilemma. In my mind, I could see the scene clearly. The laden banana plant, the short-legged turtle looking up longingly at the fruit, the monkey watching with calculating eyes. Seeing his chance, Matsing offered to help. "I am an excellent climber," he said. "I can pick the ripe bananas for you and we can share them." Pagong considered the offer. He knew Matsing was not to be trusted, but he had few options if he wanted to taste the fruit of his labor. "Very well," he agreed. "Please pick the yellow ones that are ready to eat and bring them down to share." I leaned forward, caught up in the story. "But the monkey didn't share, did he, Lolo?" My grandfather's eyes crinkled at the corners. "What do you think, Apo?" "I think the monkey ate all the bananas himself," I said firmly, indignation rising in my chest. Lolo nodded. Matsing climbed the tree quickly, his long arms and legs making the ascent easy. When he reached the bunch of ripening bananas, he picked one and peeled it. "I will just taste one to make sure they are ready," he called down to Pagong. But one taste led to another. The bananas were sweet and perfect, and Matsing was very hungry. He ate one, then another and another. Each time Pagong called up asking what was happening, Matsing would answer, "Just checking if they are ripe enough. I'll bring them down soon." I could feel my face growing hot with anger on behalf of the turtle. "That's not fair. The bananas belong to Pagong." "Yes," Lolo agreed, "but fairness does not always guide actions, especially when greed takes hold." Matsing ate and ate until his belly was round and full. He tossed the peels down where they landed all around poor Pagong, who could only watch as the fruits of his labor disappeared one by one. I crossed my arms, frowning. If I were Pagong, I would be very angry. "Oh, he was angry," Lolo assured me, his voice dropping slightly. "But anger alone solves nothing." Pagong knew he needed to be clever as Matsing, but in a different way. A bird called outside, its clear notes cutting through the afternoon stillness. Lolo paused, as if listening to it before continuing. While Matsing ate the last of the ripe bananas, Pagong quietly gathered sharp pieces of bamboo from nearby. He planted these pointed sticks all around the base of the banana tree, their sharp ends facing upward. Then he hid himself under a coconut shell. At this point in the story, Lolo paused and reached for his beetle nut box. This was his ritual, a moment to gather his thoughts before continuing a tale. I watched as his gnarled fingers opened the small wooden container, revealing the dark red beetle nuts inside. He didn't offer me any. I was too young, but I loved watching the precise movements as he prepared his chew, wrapping the nut in a lime-smeared leaf. "You know," he said as he worked, "this story has been told in our islands for hundreds of years. Long before the Spaniards came with their Bibles and guns, even before the Chinese traders brought their silks and porcelain." He looked at me to make sure I was listening, really listening. "Our hero Jose Rizal heard it as a boy, just like you. Later, when he was in Europe, far from home and fighting for our freedom with his pen, he wrote this story down and drew pictures to go with it. This detail amazed me. I had learned about Rizal in school. His face was on our peso coins. His statue stood in every town plaza. The idea that our national hero had loved the same story I was now hearing created a connection across time that made me sit up straighter. Rizal understood something important about this tale, Lolo continued. He wrote that it represents the eternal fight between the weak and the powerful. The turtle may seem weak, but he has other strengths. I nodded, thinking about the turtle's patience and planning. "Now, back to our story," Lolo said, settling the beetle nut into his cheek. Matsing had eaten his fill of bananas and was feeling very satisfied with himself. His belly was full, and he had once again outsmarted his slow neighbor. He stretched out on a branch of the banana plant, intending to take a nap in the afternoon sun. The light in the hut had shifted, painting golden rectangles on the bamboo floor. I could almost see the monkey lounging on the branch, his eyes heavy with satisfaction and the drowsiness that comes after a feast. Below, hidden under his coconut shell, Pagong waited. He listened to Matsing's movements above, the rustling of leaves, the creaking of the branch under the monkey's weight. When all had been quiet for a while, Pagong called out in a strange, hollow voice that echoed from beneath his shell, "Matsing! Matsing!" Lolo's voice changed, becoming eerier, more mysterious, like a voice from another world. Matsing, who had been drifting off to sleep, jerked awake. He looked around, confused. "Who calls me?" he asked. "Matsing, Matsing." The voice came again, seemingly from nowhere. The monkey grew frightened. He could see no one below or in the trees nearby. "Who are you? Where are you?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "I am the spirit of the banana tree," replied Pagong, still hidden. "You have stolen what was not yours. You have betrayed trust and friendship for greed." I felt a shiver run down my spine at Lolo's portrayal of the turtle's deception. It was clever, yet also a little frightening. Matsing began to shake with fear. I'm sorry," he stammered. "I was just so hungry, and the bananas looked so delicious." "Sorry is not enough," replied the voice. "You must pay for your greed. Jump down from the tree now, or I will cause the worst misfortune to follow you for the rest of your days." Lolo paused, his eyes searching mine. "What do you think happened next, Apo?" "The monkey jumped," I replied confidently. "He was too scared not to." "Yes," Lolo nodded. Matsing was terrified. Without looking below, he leapt from the branch and landed on the sharp bamboo sticks. I finished triumphantly. Lolo looked at me with surprise at my interruption, then smiled gently. "Yes, that is what happens in some tellings of the story. The monkey jumps, lands on the sharp bamboo and is badly hurt, some say killed. But there are many versions of what happens next." He shifted in his chair, and I could see he was preparing to share something deeper than just the outcome of the tale. In the version my grandmother told me, the version from here in Pampanga, the monkey falls and is injured, but not killed. He lies there moaning in pain, while Pagong emerges from beneath his shell. The monkey begs for help, promising to never steal again, to be a true friend from that day forward. Outside, the afternoon was waning. The golden light had deepened to amber, and the first evening insects had begun their chorus. From somewhere in the village came the sound of a mother calling her children home. And does the turtle help him? I asked, hoping for mercy in the story. Lolo nodded. Pagong helps Matsing, removing the bamboo splinters and treating his wounds with healing herbs. They share the remaining unripe bananas when they eventually ripen, and they become true friends, each respecting the other's nature. I considered this ending, which was different from the harsher version I had heard from other children. I like that better than the monkey dying, I admitted. But, Lolo continued, in other parts of our country, the story is told differently. In Ilocos, they say that after Matsing was killed, the turtle cut the monkey into pieces, dried the meat in the sun, and took it to the mountains to sell to other monkeys. I gasped at this gruesome turn. The other monkeys bought monkey meat? They did not know what it was, Lolo explained. But as Pagong was leaving with his payment, he called back to them, "You are now eating your own kind." When they realized the truth, they chased Pagong, caught him, and debated how to kill him. The story had taken a dark turn that fascinated me, even as it troubled me. Lolo continued, his voice taking on the cadence of ancient storytelling. The monkeys first suggested breaking Pagong's shell with a rock, but he pretended to be terrified of this. "Oh no, anything but that," he cried. So the monkeys decided instead to throw him into the river. "But turtles can swim," I protested. "Exactly," Lolo smiled. As they threw him into the water, Pagong shouted with joy, "This is where I was born. This is my home." And he swam away, leaving the angry monkeys on the shore. The twilight had deepened around us as Lolo spoke. My grandmother had lit an oil lamp, its gentle glow creating a sphere of warmth in the gathering darkness. The story felt older in this light, as if we were hearing it the same way people had for hundreds of years. "Do you see how the different endings teach different lessons?" Lolo asked. I thought about it. The first one is about forgiveness and friendship. The second one, I hesitated, trying to find the meaning. The second one is about the cycle of vengeance, Lolo supplied, and how cleverness can sometimes overcome brute strength. Both are true in their own way. He reached out and placed his hand on my head, a gesture of blessing that was as much a part of my childhood as the stories themselves. Rizal chose to tell the gentler version, the one where the monkey learns his lesson but is not destroyed by it. He believed that people like monkeys can learn and change. "Which version do you think is true, Lolo?" I asked. My grandfather's eyes, still sharp despite his age, met mine. "All of them and none of them, Apo. The truth of a story is not in whether it happened exactly that way, but in what it teaches us about ourselves." The memory of that afternoon with my grandfather lives within me still, though decades have passed since I sat cross-legged on his bamboo floor, listening to the tale of Pagong and Matsing. Lolo Francisco left us the following year, joining the ancestors whose stories he had kept alive for so long. At his funeral, I watched as my elders placed betel nuts and tobacco in his coffin, offerings for his journey to the next world. I placed a banana leaf, folded into the shape of a small boat. Few understood the significance, but I knew Lolo would. I am 52 now, a professor of Philippine folklore at the university in Manila. Sometimes when I lecture about our oral traditions, I find myself slipping into Lolo's rhythms, his way of drawing listeners into a tale. My students notice the change in my voice, how my hands begin to move like his did, painting pictures in the air. They lean forward just as I once did. Last summer I returned to San Fernando for the first time in many years. The village had changed. Concrete buildings now stood where nipa huts had once huddled together, and motorcycles outnumbered carabaos. My grandfather's hut was long gone, replaced by a cousin's modern house with glass windows and a television antenna. But the river remained, flowing as it always had. I walked along its bank in the late afternoon, listening to the water's gentle conversation with the stones. A flash of movement caught my eye, a turtle slipping from the bank into the cool current. I smiled at the synchronicity. Sitting on a boulder warmed by the day's sun, I closed my eyes and felt the story of the monkey and the turtle rippling through time, from the ancient unnamed storyteller who first shaped it, to Jose Rizal who preserved it during our nation's awakening, to my grandfather